a break, I'll check it out. So today we're going to break down and apply tactics to tackle common points of negotiation. And those are going to include when we're negotiating the deal in itself and during under contract when you're negotiating home inspections and different things like that. So we'll go through that. Analyze and recall counter tactics to make the negotiation a win-win. Hold on, maybe I got it now. Examine a negotiation strategy of the 3 Ps: prepare, present, and position, and employ those strategies through the practical application. So we are going to obviously focus on negotiating contracts. We're going to go through a couple case studies and scenarios about, you know, how we would go get through those things once we are under contract, and also when we're negotiating price and terms at the very beginning of the deal. So, you know, negotiations can be a deal breaker. I mean, I see a lot of times in personal experience, people that are not savvy about negotiation and or they shy away from it. They let deals fall apart before they even get started. So, you know, a lot of times we're trying to put the buyer and the seller together. Usually the buyer has, you know, reasons why they want to buy the house and different sticking points, and the seller does as well. But our job is to make those come together. Not always is our job to be a bully and to beat down the other agent and or the other party in the transaction. We really need to just make them all come together so everybody's happy. You know, everything Keller Williams says is win-win or no deal. So that's the way I look at it, even on negotiations. So we're going to learn some things to put your client in a good spot, but also just be cognizant that it's not always about beating the other person down. It's about getting everybody to the finish line where they want to go. So, all right, so we're going to jump in here. So obviously we are the buffers between the two parties. So, you know, whether we're a buyer's agent or a seller's agent, we are that negotiation in between. A lot of the times we don't want to put buyer and seller together because that can cause some problems. Occasionally you'll have to, but you are the buffer. So you're going to be negotiating mostly between, or you're going to be negotiating between the other agent in the party. How can your ability to negotiate affect the outcome of the deal? You know, what do you guys think about, you know, if you're a bully and you're pushing and you're just beating the other party together, do you think that's advantageous, and do you think that helps the transaction or getting to under contract, or do you think that hurts that?
Definitely hurts.
Definitely hurts. Yeah. Yeah. We need to look at it that when you're talking to the other agent, it doesn't need to be combative. It needs to be what is your client's needs? And we're going to get into that. What are your client's needs and how can we try to accommodate those, and then vice versa. So, you know, every day we're negotiating things every day, whether we know it or not, in everyday life, you know. So you have that already in you, some of the negotiation in you, and when you go into a deal, just use some of those practical everyday things when you're trying to get under contract. What do you guys think the skills that great negotiators possess?
I would think you would have to have a good negotiator has to have good emotional intelligence. You know how to read the person, everything from tonal, everything from facial expression, tonal usage. There's just so much that goes into it, because if you can't read the person you're dealing with, I mean, you know, you can say someone could be telling you one thing, but just the way they say it is a totally different thing.
Absolutely.
And that'll let you know how to steer the conversation.
Yes. Yes. And then, you know, the way that the person that you're dealing with acts, but also sometimes it's about the way you're, you know, the calmness in a situation and how you're handling that also plays a big part in it, is what I think as well. So, you know, I always say that You can tell the difference between an agent who has commission breath, is what they call it, where, you're dying to get this deal done because you absolutely need it. And I know some people on the deals need the commissions, but you can't do it like that. You have to be calm with the people. And I think when you attack it that way, then I guess you could say that that calms and gets everybody into a place where we can make a deal happen. Let's see. Explain that a negotiation is bargaining process between two or more parties. And there's two phases to this. There's the offer phase. So obviously when you present an offer, if you're a buyer's agent, you present an offer, you are going to put all that stuff together, present an offer to the seller, the listing agent, and then you're going to negotiate if they counter back. The second part of it is under contract. So obviously we know that sometimes getting things under contract in the first place is the easiest part, but getting them to closing is the hardest part. Depending on the type of home that you're dealing with, if there's inspections involved, if there's financing involved, if there is, other deals that it's contingent upon. A lot of times you have the domino where everything has to, the first deal in California has to fall before all the domino pieces go together. So there's a lot of negotiation, timing, rent backs, different things that happen along the way, even after you're under contract. All right, we're supposed to hop into some groups here, but I don't think we're going to be able to do that. What are some ways that you guys think that you negotiate in everyday life, not necessarily in real estate?
With your children.
Absolutely. I know that very well. I think I've already got some good negotiators, and they're all under 8, so that's scary. But absolutely. All right. So one thing that says in here is after you get your investment of time under contract, you want to get the deal from contract to close as smoothly as possible, because that's money. So one thing is constant communication with the other parties. So you need to make sure that all the time you're talking to the other agents about what's going on. If there's a problem that comes up, don't let it fester. Talk to them. It's a constant negotiation between the buyer's agent, listing agent, no matter what side you're on. So make sure you're in constant conversation with that person. That way you are creating that rapport so it can easily work back and forth. So that's a main thing, because we're going to start that from the time you present the offer, or the time the offer is presented, all the way to closing. Once the offer is made, there's 3 outcomes for an offer. So it can either be accepted as is, as you presented it, or as it was presented to you. It can be rejected, or it can be countered. Rejection and countered are where your negotiation skills are really gonna shine. You're gonna need to try to say, how can we figure this out to make it a win-win for everyone? A lot of people, like I said earlier, they will say, okay, my offer got rejected, and they don't even really go back to the other agent on that side and or their client that they represent. They just think the deal's dead. In this industry, that's not the case. There's times when you think the deal's dead, and one little thing or one night for somebody to think about it will change their whole view, and they'll be able to move forward on the transaction. So don't always think that if you get a rejection. Now, in this market right now with limited inventory, if your client wants to put an offer $100,000 less than asking, and that the house is priced correctly, then you're probably not getting there. It's a big gap to fill. But if you are one tiny thing, dates on settlement, and or if you're closing cost assistance, if you're close, then you can probably get it to the finish line. And if both parties, the buyer's agent and the listing agent, are on the same page with that, then they can help to get that together. So I want you guys to talk. We're going to take a minute or so. Can you guys tell me, and I'm going to write these down, all the different negotiations that you think could go on in a transaction?
Oh, dear.
So, I mean, and I'm talking about all the way from the beginning with the contract, which there's going to be plenty in that, and then moving forward as everything goes on to get it from contract to close. Does anybody have any?
Well, I'm assuming
Closing
everything's
date?
you okay. Closing. Okay, go ahead, Michael.
That's all right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, I just know from my past, I don't know, property improvements. I know with me, mine was a roof and a septic on my first house that I bought,
Sure.
and that was good.
And that negotiation can either be done at the beginning when you present the offer, and or when you're under contract and you go through the inspection phases. So that negotiation, if you know that something needs to be fixed, you can actually write that in the contract of sale and then negotiate that out ahead of time there. So, and or if you find it by the home inspector finding it. So that's a good one. That's a good one. Anything else?
What might convey with the property?
Absolutely.
Furniture or anything of the sort.
Absolutely.
Which I just read on one of those Facebook groups. I thought was absolutely, some of them was totally kidding, but apparently it's been true. People have actually negotiated pets with sales of houses on a separate thing, but it literally became contingent upon the sale of the house.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in my experience, you can
I want those
negotiate
kind of, I don't want to be in
anything on
that
the contract to say. I've not seen that, but yes, I've seen some pretty crazy things. So yes, absolutely.
No, my luck. That's going to be my first contract.
You're gonna negotiate a German Shepherd or something like that.
Yeah, I hope not.
Yep. Anybody else?
I would say the dates, settlement dates, move in, move out dates, those are all negotiable.
Yes, they are. They are, and you're going to lay the groundwork with your contract. So you want to make sure that, obviously the dates are in your party's favor, and or if you can't, if you have to bend a little bit, then you know what they are, because not all times can you negotiate those dates after you're under contract. Those are another addendum that has to be negotiated, and that causes another I'd not say problem, but it causes another negotiation after the fact. So in my opinion, the contract is where you start. You want to do your best negotiation and make sure your client is aware of what you did negotiate, thoroughly understands that under contract. And then after that, all those negotiations are going to hinge off of the contract. Anybody else?
Did anyone already say? Oh, no, I'm sorry, Michael. You already said dates, right? The actual dates in question.
Yeah, I just said date of closing.
Yeah.
Or closing costs as well.
I want to jump back a second to the repairs. So some of you have done, several deals and a lot of deals, but on a contract, when we have a home inspection and we go through and the home inspector picks out, 5 things that are made on the major, there may be some minor issues or some safety, functionality, different things like that. That is going to be a difficult negotiation if there's a lot of things on the major list. In experience, you want to strongly work on getting your clients, if you're the buyer's agent, what's on that major list. But they also have to tell you what's important to them. So you're going to give your best insight on that. They're going to tell you, my dad does carpentry work. He can take care of X or whatever. So you're going to have an initial conversation before you even go into that home inspection about what expectations are. And I think if you give expectations to your buyer and or your seller on the listing side about what the home inspection is going to bring up, and or how that process works, that helps with negotiations on both sides. So, you don't want to go and say, okay, we're under contract, we're going to do inspections, and every single thing that the home inspector checks, flags, questions on the home inspection, you have the right and the opportunity to ask for everything. At the end of the day, they kind of do, but in the contract of sale, it says functionality, safety, and major items. It used to have on there that anything over $500 would be something that you could ask for. They've taken that out of the contract. That was kind of hard because if you had a bunch of small electrical items that didn't amount to $500, how did you work that? And that's why they took that out. But prepare your clients moving forward for the home inspection, because that could be the one that gets ugly in a negotiation.
Question for you real quick,
Yeah.
Russ, on that. How, say your buyer's agent, they like the house, they go get their home inspector, they get the home inspection, there's a litany of a list, and suddenly now the seller's like, you know what, I've heard about that person, I don't trust them, I'm gonna bring in my own home inspector, we're gonna divvy this up, or have you ever run into that where the seller doesn't trust the home buyer's home inspector?
Absolutely. What I recommend then, for my buyer side is I want to see a contractor and or tradesman that are licensed go in there and give an evaluation of the work. You don't just want somebody's brother to go in there that used to do construction 20 years ago. You need to be writing in your contracts or in your addendums per the fixes, the repair addendums, that anything needs to be done by a licensed contractor. And then you're going to want to see what they did. I've had times before where, especially on crawl spaces. So if crawl spaces, if there's water and moisture in the crawl space, I've had situations where that we'll put in there before they do any of the work, we need to see what they intend to do, and we have to agree to that. So you can write anything you want to in that addendum if you're representing the buyer, to cover the buyer there. And that's what I would recommend. It has to be a licensed contractor that's taking care of those items. If not, you don't know what kind of work they're doing. Does that answer that question?
Yeah. No, I was just kind of curious because, as you were talking about it, I got thinking, what happens if the seller just, because you could have, there's just so many, again, even if they're licensed, you just don't know anything about the relationship to the buyer and everything else. So I'm just curious if the sellers have ever come back and try to counter by saying, I'm going to bring in my own person, then we're going to compare the list.
Yeah, it's sticky, and you're trusting. What I always say is, I'm going to look at that response from whoever they got, and I'm going to say, do I feel comfortable with that response? Or then I can go in and say, can I get another, third party? And I keep going back to crawl spaces, but like if somebody came in and said there's moisture in the crawl space, all it needs to do is have the dirt graded outside on the right corner of the property. That's going to take care of the whole problem, but you've got a foot of water in the whole crawl space. You kind of know that's sort of BS. So then you probably want to go in and say, I'd like to get, another person to go in there and take a look at that. Now, when you get to that point where they've got somebody looking at it and telling them one thing, and then you've got them looking at it and telling them another thing, then your guy who you had in there could say, okay, it needs a total encapsulation. It's going to cost $7,000. Their people say, I can regrade the right corner of this house and it's going to cost $500. So you're at an impasse at that point. So then what I would recommend there is, you got to do whatever your buyer wants to do. If your buyer says, I don't feel comfortable, then they can back away at that point. Because they can back away because they're not truly taking care of the problem. With that being said, a lot of times we would negotiate maybe that the seller would give $4,000 towards or $2,000 or whatever you come up with towards that. And then the buyer can hire the company that they want. But it's all going to depend on if the buyer has extra money, how the loan terms can work. You know, on our side, on my side of the county, I deal with a lot of USDA financing, 100%. Closing cost is built into the deal. So, you know, they're getting $10,000 in closing costs, and these people literally have sometimes $700, $1,000 in their checking account. So obviously if there's issues, we want the seller to fix them ahead of time, because if not, then my buyers don't have the money to fix those issues. So you got to just watch. If you've got a really savvy buyer that has a lot of money, they may take a credit instead of having the fixes done. That way they know they can hire who they want and you know, get it done to their satisfaction by, even if it's their brother-in-law who has this company, that it doesn't matter. It's just money at that point. So you're not negotiating item 1, item 2, item 3 anymore. So in my previous, and I'm just going to jump here real quick. In my previous brokerage, when we're talking about negotiating repairs, sometimes you're going to have to negotiate line items on repairs. You know, double tap on the breakers, you know, wood rot in a certain situation, different things. You're going to have to get through those because the financing is involved. But my former broker did say one thing, that if you can negotiate money, then that is the easiest negotiation, because once everybody agrees to that, you don't have to worry about getting the contractor to go out there and writing you a letter. You don't have to worry about liability. Once that is done and you're past that point, and let's say your seller's going to give, or the seller, you represent the buyer, seller's going to give $3,000 towards repairs, and the buyer's going to take care of it after the fact. It's done. It doesn't matter if the HVAC unit was looked at beforehand, and then a day after settlement, you're getting a call because the HVAC unit went up. It does not matter. Once you negotiate money, you're done. So that's the easiest. If you can get people to negotiate money, that's the easiest negotiation on repairs. So,
Russ, can I ask you a question? This is Pam. You would say, I'll give you a X number of dollars credit toward
Yes.
the repair of these items, and
Yes.
that's it. Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can do it that way, you know, and that usually, it depends on how you want to work the deal. A lot of that's going to be either taken off of the sales price. So it depends on the financing. You know, if it's a cash deal, you can just take $3,000 off the sales price, and that would be, a lot of times here we'll work that into closing cost assistance. So then that would just be money they didn't have to bring. One thing you have to watch though is if you're dealing with people that are borrowing or that are getting the top allowable amount. So like if somebody's getting 6% closing cost assist, you can't add another $3,000 on top of that. So you have to watch it. Like a lot of times we think that that's okay, but the lender won't even allow them to get that money back. Now, I gotta watch what I say, but I've had times where on a smaller amount where, you know, the seller just wrote the buyer a check for $500 and gave it to him at closing. Per the rules, you're really not supposed to have checks dispersed outside of the closing, but we've had to do it sometimes because you can't add it to the deal, because then that would be over your 6% or over the allowable limit. You know, sometimes it's 3%, sometimes it's 6%, depending on the financing. So, but all that's creativity. So you guys need to talk to the other agent. Sometimes you need to bring in somebody, you know, you might want to talk to Walt. You might want to talk to an agent that's done a lot of deals and say, I'm at an impasse here. How can I make this happen? Because this is tens or, you know, thousands of dollars of commission. And it's stuff that, you know, if your client really wants to get the house, it's your duty to try to do everything in your power to get them there. So,
Can I say one thing?
Absolutely.
This is Terry.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I just want to say, and how do I say this nicely? I'm just going to say it. Don't always believe the home inspector. Most of them have just taken a course. And a real close example that just happened when I just sold my home in Colorado. young guy came in, checked off things. And two things he said. He goes, one, there's damage on the roof from hail. Never heard his footsteps up on top. Maybe he peeked up there. Okay, whatever. And two, he talked about a grounding rod. They now have to go through the garage area as well. And I know he never went up there because we ourselves went up there and could not access that point. So the roof hole issue, though, was I had just replaced the roof 1 month prior. We had had no hail since that time. So when I saw that, I was like, this guy's out to lunch. So, we just sent our contract. I had my roofing contractor call and send the contract and tell them what he had just done. And that was all fine. So that's just kind of my thing. Use your common sense and listen, like you said, talk to other experienced agents, because not all those issues are as big sometimes as they make them seem, but it freaks people out. The buyers get all upset. The sellers get upset. I had one lady, you have to tighten the bolts on the toilet. You need to call a plumber to come in there. And I'm like, are you joking me?
Yes.
You tighten with the rent. You know what I'm saying? So try to only address the real safety major issues, and the home wear and tear,
Yes.
downplay.
As a buyer's agent, you're going to align yourself with a home inspector, that one or two that you recommend that you really feel comfortable with. When you have issues with home inspectors missing things or not understanding things, and you go through deals and then the other party is, refuting what they say, then you probably need to be looking for another home inspector. As
Right.
time goes on, you're going to find somebody that you feel really comfortable with, and you say, this guy or this gal knows what to look for, is treating my clients right. Because the last thing you want is for your buyers to say, well, you recommended this home inspector and they did a shoddy job, and now I'm finding all these things wrong. So
Right.
that's important. And I would go to, anybody that that does a lot of deals and say, who do you use? Because they've already been through that. And I have no clue what everybody's production is. I'm just saying, I just talk to somebody in the area that's done a lot of deals, because they've already weeded that person out. Because as a agent doing a lot of deals, you want everything to go as smooth as possible. So we've already weeded out those people that we don't want to deal with. There are home inspectors that I will not use. I had a home inspection company did a septic inspection on a property in the rain, never got out of their truck at settlement. After settlement, we had a storm, the alarm went off, and we had to spend $5,000 to put a new septic system, towards a new septic system. And the home inspection company gave us $1,000. So
You say we, who's we had to spend it?
Myself and the broker. So
Really?
we
Wow.
did that to, we had an attorney involved. We could have probably taken them to court, but we felt like it was better to make the client happy than to move down. A lot of different things there, but I learned my lesson. That company, and I'm not going to name names, that company, I don't use them anymore. And I'm very skeptical when they do an inspection on one of my properties, because I learned my lesson.
Well, if they're licensed in Maryland too, after the call on his side, I need to talk to you just so I can know not to use them.
Okay.
So,
yes.
So how that, okay.
Yep.
So because you called that septic inspector to come out, then you as the agent are liable for what they or they didn't do?
No, but they were saying that they really gave us a lot of pushback. This was a couple of years ago, so I can't remember all the details, but they really pushed back and said, they have limited liability and everything. Well, come to find out, the inspector, we met everybody out at the property. The buyers were there. The inspector came out. My broker was there, myself and one of my agents on my team. And we basically or he basically said, it was pouring rain. I didn't do it. I didn't even do the inspection. They pumped the tank. I didn't pull the lids. I didn't do anything. And he admitted to us at that point. His boss was not going to pay. And we had sellers there or buyers there that were going to take probably everybody to court if they didn't get something figured out. So at the end of the day, we ate it, and we ate most of it. And the inspection company did pay, I think, $1,000, but it learned my lesson. I mean, my team does a lot of deals, and that inspection company used to do a good amount of those deals. They lost a lot. So, but I'm just saying, know who you're dealing with. Pick a company that you can call. I'm not trying to do a plug, but my team uses Prospect, and they do. If you need to call one of the inspectors, you can call them and say, I've got a question on, major issue 5. And even if I am on the listing side and I get a Prospect call, inspection and/or some other inspection companies that I know, I'll get on the phone with them and say, can you just give me a little bit more clarification on this here? And that usually, they could say, I had to put it on the minor, or I had to put it on the major, but I really don't think it's that big of a deal. Then when we go back and say, okay, I need to get a contractor to look at this item to give me pricing and or to do the job, we have a little bit more insight. So the further you dig into that, then the better you are when you get your contractor out there to say, this is what the inspector has seen. Can you just verify and put eyes on it?
So what you just said there,
Mhm.
like he didn't really think he needed to put it on there. So why did he? Do they have to have a certain amount, or is it when they see a certain percentage of an issue?
So inspectors are hired by the buyer. No matter if you call to set the inspection up,
Right.
They're hired by the buyer. They're paid for by the buyer, and they're going to do the job. I don't care who you use. They're trying to protect the buyer, but at the end of the day, they're trying to protect themselves. So
Right.
they're doing an inspection and trying to be as thorough as possible. That way, if there is a leaking hot water heater and they missed it, a lot of companies do have insurance policies, and they're eating these fixes at the end. So they're doing everything in their power to say, when I went to the inspection, this is what I saw. I'm documenting everything. And a lot of them are doing them online. They have like an online thing on their iPad where they're taking pictures and they're writing remarks in. But they are going to have to flag some things. There's some flashing issues that my team's had problems with Prospect, and we actually reached out to them and talked to them. My dad used to be a mason most of his life, and he kind of explained to them. And like you said, Terry, we had an open conversation with them, and they agreed with what we said. So they're taking classes, they're learning. A lot of times they're doing training, depending on the size of the home inspection company, they're getting training from the top, but they are taking a class, being sent out there to do inspections, and a little bit learning on the job. But some of these people have no construction background, so they don't know how it really works in real life. They can,
And it
sounds
is hard.
good on paper, but not necessarily the way things work. So sorry, Terry.
Yeah, no, and it is hard. I do understand, because it's not like an electrician coming in just looking at that. They've got to look at everything. So they kind of got to be a jack of all trades. But yeah.
You will find that the inspectors will be, they're going to CYA. They're going to cover themselves as much as possible. And a lot of times they'll tell you, I just put that on there because I had to cover myself.
Just curious.
I don't think it's an issue, but I had to write that on the report.
So just curious, when you're a seller's agent or a listing agent, part of the negotiation, do you encourage your sellers, Russ, to like, hey, you got to throw in a home warranty just to entice the buyer? I mean, just because from what I'm hearing, at least that's the way it's being pitched in training, that home warranties are becoming so more affordable to put into the deal.
The answer to that question is I wish that we did, but we do not. We're dealing with the clients that we deal with mostly are 200,000 and below. it's just a different clientele. So for people to say, okay, we're charging 6% commission, transaction coordination fee, plus, your deed prep, plus you're going to offer a home warranty of $500. I mean, we haven't had really good luck pushing that. I do understand that sometimes we get, and I will tell you, like agents that come from the beach that bring us offers, a lot of them are including a home warranty in their offer. And at that point, we're just breaking the numbers down and saying, this is what your net is. And I would say 50% of the time we accept it, or 50% of the time we're negotiating that back out of the contract.
Okay.
I wish that everybody, in a perfect world, when we go take a listing, I would like, and there's some inspection companies that do this, in a perfect world, everybody would go get a pre-listing inspection, home inspection, okay? Then after the fact, when that inspection happens, the next inspection happens, everything's probably going to be covered. And then if they offer a home warranty, then the buyers feel really, really comfortable. If you have strong sellers that have a lot of equity in the property and have money to do it, they may do it. Now, the flip side to, and I might be going down a rabbit hole, but the flip side to getting a pre-listing inspection would be if major issues came up on the home inspection, the buyer could not pay for them, then you have to disclose those issues. So you may make a house, and I guess you're getting ahead of it before you even get there, but now you're going onto the market with disclosing major issues. It's kind of hard. It's a hard situation. You either deal with it at the home inspection or you deal with it at the very beginning. And a lot of people say you should get it out of the way. That way, if it's a decent listing to take, because everything's working, everything's good, and the sellers can fix everything that needs to be done.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, because growing up in the Salisbury area, and most likely any deals I would be doing in that area would be the 200K down. So that's why. But yeah, just you grow up here on the shore. My teenage years, I was living at the beach, surfing, whatever. So I'm finding out that it's a different culture here because the price point. I'm finding out agents who are established. I mean, they are doing that. They are literally paying part of their marketings. They are paying for the inspection before they even list it, because they want their sellers, just because the price point's so high and the buyer's going to be paying that kind of money. So, I feel like I'm kind of like torn between, I'm just trying to okay, I guess it comes down to demographics, the area, what you're doing. There's just so many factors, but that's part of negotiating, needing to know that.
It is. And you can create a script for when you take listings. Last class I taught was listings, and we didn't really talk about that, but you can create a script that, look, I recommend or encourage or pay for a pre-listing inspection because it helps with our negotiation, one, on the price, and two, it turns around and helps with our negotiation when the buyers do a home inspection. Sometimes if you have an inspection let's say that you did a home inspection, a pre-listing home inspection, and then the house went on the market the next week, and you went under contract the following week. You're literally 2 weeks from that inspection. So sometimes if you present that to the buyer's agent, they may not even do another home inspection. So you've already taken care of everything negotiation wise that kills deals.
And that literally was pretty much the selling point that was, no pun intended, being given by the agents who do these sorts of deals, that they're saying that if you price it right and you know what the inspection report is going to say, it makes it much more smoother at the table in terms of the transaction. There doesn't get to be into the, ins and outs where basically buyers pull away at the last minute for frivolous things.
Yeah. And you're going to see, I think you'll see that. So right now we're in a huge seller's market. So inventory is super, super low. So people are just putting things on the market. Buyers are saying, I don't need to do inspections. I can settle, we're doing escalation clauses. So it's all going to depend on the market. When things stabilize and or become a buyer's market, if you represent the listing agent, I think or if you're a listing agent on a property, probably not a bad idea to do that, because then you stand out from the other listings. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense.
Yeah, I mean, right,
Yeah,
right
the
now you
thing-
may get a little bit of pushback because people say, I don't know if anybody is, but or is getting pushback like this, but you go to list a property and they say, well, we all know that inventory is so low. I can just put my house on Zillow as a for sale by owner and I can get a buyer. Well, then they have to negotiate for themselves. They have to be that middle person in between the deal. But a lot of people now are saying, why am I paying for anything? Because the buyers will just come. So it's a catch-22. You're going to have to survey the scene, talk to the people that you're dealing with as far as the people selling their house. Just pick a script. If you want to start doing that, do it. But either they're going to pay for it or you're going to pay for it.
The only thing is, then you lose that. I mean, because if I'm looking through homes and I see 3 or 5 of them that I like, and this was listed all these problems, I might say, I don't feel like negotiating that. That's a hassle.
Yes.
I have no emotional connection. If you didn't tell me and I go visit and I envision myself there and I've already done all that, then you tell me the problems. Ooh, I really want to work it out because I'm emotionally attached. That's as a woman speaking.
That's where I am. That's how I feel about the price point in the homes that we list. If I was selling, $1 million houses at the beach, then it's a totally different story. You want it to be pristine. We're dealing with a lot of people that, they don't have a whole lot of money, and I just rather would get them under contract and then negotiate problems out because a lot of times people feel like if they're under contract, they either have already bought another, they're under contract on another house, or they're halfway to their goal of wherever they want to go, whether that be a rental or move in with their family in Florida or whatever. You represent your client, but it also, everybody has a little bit more motivation to make it work. So
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's weird about Delmarva.
You're
Delmarva,
100% right.
yeah, and Terry, I appreciate it, but that's the weird thing about Delmarva. I mean, you're talking just a few miles the demographic can just, like literally flip. And so, but because you're licensed for the whole state, it's like, okay, well, how do you, so that's, sorry for peppering with all the questions. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it.
If you go take $1 million listing in Bethany and your clients are very savvy and you can say to them, look guys, for $600 or whatever it may be for all the inspections, we can do all these inspections ahead of time. If we figure out if some of the deck needs replacing or it's rotted or whatever it may be, I can get contractors in there and we can take care of it. That way we can mark it, we go in and we won't have to worry about anything. Those people are willing to say, okay, if I have to spend $5,000 to make this place pristine, then I'm going to do it, and I'm willing to do it and can do it. So you're just going to have to figure it out. Yeah. So, we talked about some of these and you guys brought them up, but, closing costs. So I don't know where you guys sell all the time, but we see a lot of this. I'd say probably 70% of the deals we do have closing cost assistance. So that is hard if you have a seller. So I'm going to be on the seller side now. So if I'm a listing agent and I have sellers that are 60, 70, 80 years old, you do not understand the times that I come to them with an offer and say, okay, I got an offer for your property. And let's say the house is listed for 200 and they ask for 10,000 in closing costs. Sometimes I get offers of 210 with 10,000 back. So all they did was build the closing cost on top. And I have people that say, I'm not paying for their closing costs. If they don't have enough money to buy this house, I'm not doing it. So you have to then educate them to say it's no different than getting a full price offer. But if you did get if the house was listed for 200 and you got a full price offer with 10 back, you need to educate them to say you're getting a 190 offer on a $200,000 listing. So that is to some people, they just don't understand. I'm on the backside of being a millennial, but so I feel like everybody feels like, oh, the seller in my area should pay for the closing costs. Some people just don't see it that way, and they think you should have 20% down. You should have your closing costs to pay. So that's a little bit of a negotiation depending on the lender. When I go to talk about closing costs, some lenders will say, ask for 6%. In my personal experience, you need a lender that you can say, here's the deal, here's the taxes. I need a breakdown because I had a deal just happen a month ago. WSFS did the loan. They asked for $13,500 I was a listing agent, but an agent on my team was the buyer's agent. They asked for $13,500 in seller's help. So when I did my net sheet, I ran my net sheet for my seller at $13,500, but I told him this is a first-time home buyer, so they get a deduction on the transfer tax. That number's too high. But if you take the deal, the buyers think they're getting $13,500, but they can't get back more than what they've paid in deposit. So I don't know if that makes sense, but let's say the closing costs come in at $8,000, the seller gets all that money back. So you got to watch it when lenders just say, ask for 6%, ask for 6%, ask for 6%. 6% on a $800,000 deal is totally different money than it is on a $100,000 deal. So you need to make sure that you have a relationship with a lender that's going to give you real numbers and that are going to know, instead of just saying ask for 6%. Because these people, when it all shook out, and the lender's fees must have been low at WSFS, but they ended up my sellers gave them $6,000. So we gained quite a bit of money on the sale by accepting that deal at $13,500, and they only used $6,000. Now there's times where you're in multiple offer situations and you've got clients and your lender says, ask for 6%. So let's say I have a buyer, and let's say that Julie has a buyer. Okay, so Julie was smart, and Julie went to her lender and said, really, how much am I going to need here? Can you break this down for me? So let's say that lender said $7,000. So I offered on a $200,000 house, Julie offered $200,000 with $7,000 in closing cost assistance. But I just took the word of my lender and said, I want 3.5, I'm going to take 6%. Well, 6% of 200 is $12,000. So I'm $5,000 difference in an offer because my lender is telling me one thing, and in actuality, it really is totally different. Does everybody understand that?
Yeah, but I guess the follow-up question is when you got into this industry and you've been in it, I'm just curious, how many lenders will you go to? I'm assuming you have like a top 3 that you kind of like,
Yeah.
and was it the same thing that you learned from by word of mouth, or by the same thing, just you get messed up on a deal and so you've learned I'm not going to use that lender again, and then
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I was just kind of curious because that's, when you're brand new, I have no clue who to go to.
Yes. One thing for new agents, and I have no clue how long you guys have been in the business, but if you're a new agent, especially if you take Bold or go to some of these classes with some that lenders are going to be in, have a conversation with them. They'll probably take you out to lunch. You'll get to know how savvy they are, give them a deal, test them out. Like I also said, go look at who other people are, top buyers agents are using as lenders. I don't know. Whoever the top buyer's agent in your office is, ask them, who do you use for a lender? They're going to tell you. If you want to know who the best USDA lender is in Western Sussex County, it's the one that I use. So if you want to ask me, I'll tell you. That's what you need to do, because a lot of your negotiation is going to hinge on price-wise, if you're including closing costs on your lender, what their fees are, what they can do closing cost assistance-wise. So not all of you are going to have to deal with closing costs every deal, but we do quite a bit, and it makes a huge difference. So
Russ, who's your favorite USDA lender?
my favorite USDA lender is Meridian Mortgage, the Primo team. They do more USDA deals than anybody in the state of Delaware. USDA is not hard, but it's different. And those guys and girls, they do it. on a daily basis, so they know when there's hurdles, that how we get around those hurdles. So not to knock anybody, but those guys will tell you, if, you know, I've had it before where if I go and work a buyer and they need a jumbo loan, that's not in their wheelhouse. So they'll say, go use whoever else because that's in their wheelhouse. So you're going to know what your niche is, what your price point is, and try to line up with a lender like that. That's what I would recommend. So next thing on the list is
Russ,
yeah.
is it a good idea, to have a conversation with your sellers, when you're listing the property about, the certain, the certain things that people may come to, like asking for seller's assistance and things like that, to kind of wet their whistle, so they're not like, what does that mean?
100%. And my partner and I, who we share listings, when we go to a listing appointment and we know it's in the range where it's going to be a USDA, FHA type deal, we are automatically saying, one, we're either pricing to build in a little bit for closing costs, or we're telling them expect closing cost assistance, because in this price point, like 150 in Seaford and 150 to 175, I would say 95% of the buyers, it may be more, are asking for closing cost assistance.
Yeah.
So we're prepping them. And like I said, I've run into situations where older people have really pushed back on it. And I don't mean older, people that don't understand.
They don't understand.
They don't understand that, but we have to preface them ahead of time, because if not, when we bring that offer, which could be a amazing offer for them, they'll do it just out of principle. They'll say no out of principle. Well, if I have a buyer, whether it be mine or whether it be anybody else's, that is can buy this house, they may only have $1,000 in their checking account, but they are qualified per the lender to buy this home. We do deals all the time like that. So I wouldn't want, as a listing agent, to stop people from selling my listing and or helping my clients out, because we just can't see past the way things are done in this market.
Right.
So
education.
And
the listing, the sellers will, they'll look at it in a negative way towards you as well, because
right.
They'll think you weren't, well, why didn't you explain this to me beforehand? If you're not upfront, just like they say, disclose.
Right.
Give
That's
them
right.
as much information so that they're prepared too.
That's right. And when you're going into that, and I'm jumping into a listing agreement to get back to that, but when you're going into a listing agreement, you're going to tell your clients, like, if I'm going to list a house in Bethany on the ocean, I'm going to say, this is probably what our buyer is going to be. This is how that situation goes. It's either going to be a cash deal or, huge money down. We're asking for a big deposit during their inspection periods, different things like that. When I go into a listing appointment at $150,000, I'm saying, you're going to get an FHA, USDA, possibly VA, if your house can qualify for those types of loans. So we're setting the precedence ahead of time. If you go to a house that there's chip paint all over the place, there's major issue, I'm just trying to, if they don't want to get a septic inspection, they're going to try to sell it as is, then I immediately say, okay, so we're taking 80% of the buyers out of the pool. Because you're not willing to fix the house to go FHA, USDA, or VA in my area. So would you rather work with the 30% of the people that have cash? And I also say the 30% of the people that have cash are going to understand what the flaws are, and they're going to offer you a number to justify them buying the home and then fixing. So, I have all these people, I don't want to, and some people can't, they don't have the money, but I don't care, even if we get a Class H inspection and septic fails, I'm not fixing it. Well then you're dealing with an investor probably at that point, and that person is going to build that money right in. So if we were asking $150 for it, that investors are going to probably offer you 130 just for his time, energy, effort of putting a new septic in, and the money he's got to spend. So yes, when you go there, whatever the situation is, disclose, and know your market. Know what kind of buyers are coming in that market.
Also, would you suggest, for the, newer agents, to actually, reach out to a lender and have them explain all the different, FHA, VA, USDA, so you're, because they are different, and
The lenders are, so my lender, or the guys that I work with, they have like, I think they have 6 loan officers. So one of the guys that I deal with mostly, when I have new agents come on the team and I'm training the new agents, I have a training day about financing. So Treg will come in and Treg will sit down with them, and he's got sheets of all the different loans, income limits, different things like that. And that's not really our job. We're trying to get them over to the lender to have them pre-approved. They're going to then put them into places, but you do need to know kind of the parameters. Like if you've got somebody that makes $200,000 a year, they can't get USDA. So like, don't even try with that. And don't all say, oh, well, you can get this 100% financing. Well, you make too much money. So you want to have a relationship with someone that's going to sit down with you. And like I said, these people, they don't know whether you're going to turn into a 50 deal, 100 deal a year person. Okay.
Right.
So they're all salivating to talk to you guys because they want opportunity. If you bring them 4 deals a year, that's still 4 deals for them to do loans on. So most people that I know, most lenders that I know, they would love to take you out to lunch. They would love to sit down with you, come to the office and sit down with you. So absolutely, good lending partners. You're supposed to give, 2 or 3 options. We do that, but there's always that one that you feel really comfortable about, and you're going to push them a little bit towards that person.
Carol's always looking to have a training on a Friday. This might be a good one to have,
Absolutely.
A lender come in
Absolutely.
and sit and explain things, or a couple lenders actually.
Yes,
So.
and I know that they have lenders in the different offices that, they pay to be in the offices, so I wouldn't see why Carol couldn't get people to come in and talk to you. So
Right. Okay.
Their
you.
business is predicated off of deals that we send to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So they don't, some of them do, but a lot of times they don't market to single buyers. They market to the agents to bring them buyers, because we are the ones that are gaining those leads and bringing them to them.
Right.
So,
All right. Thank you very much.
no problem. We're going to go another about 10 minutes and take a little break. So closing date is, something that a lot of times is negotiated. So you may put in there, depending on the type of financing, if it's a cash deal, you want to go real strong. Well, we can close this thing as soon as the title's done, and we'll do it in 15 days or whatever, 10 days, whatever it may be. That might be good for some people, but on the seller side, if I have an estate that has every bit of furniture that they've ever collected in their entire life, 15-day close doesn't make sense to my sellers. So you need to have a conversation with, a lot of times you need to have a conversation with the buyers or the listing agent, if you're a buyer's agent, and say, what makes this attractive to your people? Do you need 60 days? Do you need 30 days? Now, your buyers may say, I got to get out of my apartment in 30 days. I have to be in 30 days. So you have to look at your client, have conversations with the other agent and say, what makes my offer attractive to your sellers? Go back to your buyers and say, they can't do it in 15 days. They can't do it in 30 days because they have so much stuff to move out. Is there any way, can you move in with your parents for 15 days or 30 days until you then move into the house? So closing date can be a big, big deal. Closing dates sometimes are predicated by the deal that comes before yours. And what I mean by that is if somebody's selling a house in Annapolis and they're moving to Bethany, then we sometimes are at the mercy of the deal before. So there may be times where you can't change closing dates or really negotiate hard on closing dates. It's all going to depend on what your buyer's willing to do and what the seller's willing to take. So conveyances. So I think so Steve talked about in conveyances, obviously really watch on conveyances about check with your lender to make sure that they're going to allow that to be put into a standard Delaware contract. A lot of times they don't want to see furniture in those contracts. Reach out to somebody that does a lot of deals at the beach if you have questions about that, or ask Bridget or somebody, because we don't deal with that too often here, but a lot of times you have to do a separate addendum. So you'll do a standard Delaware contract, do a separate addendum. That addendum will say, okay, the living room furniture, all the bedroom furniture, whatever the dog, whatever you negotiate will go separately. The lender can't see that because usually they can't use that as they're looking at the land and the house. So they cannot use the furniture as because the appraiser doesn't want to see it. So if we're trying to get an appraiser, they're not going to add 20 grand for furniture. Now, I don't want to speak out of turn. Anybody that does Ocean City or anybody like that, there may be lenders that do account for that because the units are furnished and they're being rented. So
Yeah, I just talked to
an
an agent. I talked to an agent yesterday about that. It's because I'm curious, because everything I've been taught is it has to be kind of like a separate bill of sale. And I think some of the agents were saying that there are lenders and there are ways to write the contract, but it has to be very specific in how it's done. So for that very reason, because lenders they lend for real estate, they don't lend for anything personal. So the way that contract has to be very specific.
Sure. I'm going to go back to, if you have a question like that, find out who does the most and go ask them. Keller, I came from Remax, and now I'm at Keller Williams. Keller Williams is an open company. I feel like you have a question, go talk to one of the people you look up to or one of the people you think's doing a ton of business, and they'll tell you the answer to that question or point you in the right direction. So absolutely. Find out. Things are changing every day. So I that's not my expertise, but that can be in my area. If somebody wants to buy the sofa and the whatever pool table in the basement, we're probably putting it in a separate addendum and doing a bill of sale outside of closing. So that's how we'll do it, just so we don't muddy the waters, especially on government-backed loans. They don't want to see any of that. So earnest money deposit. So that's the next thing on the list. Earnest money deposit all depends on the type of property you're selling, the type of buyers you represent, and the situation. If you're in multiple offer situation and you do, a $10,000 deposit and everybody else is doing a $1,000 deposit, it just looks better to the seller when I'm presenting offers. Looks like they're serious. In some situations you'll do a non-refundable deposit. So, I got to sell my house in Annapolis, but I'm going to put, I want to go under contract. I don't want it to be a 72-hour kick out, but I'm going to put $5 grand down non-refundable. So I'm basically saying if my house doesn't sell by a certain time, I lose $5,000. That makes me feel like, okay, they're going to do whatever they can do to sell their house in Annapolis. So earnest money, rule of thumb, like whatever, if you usually do 1,000 or usually do 2,000, 3,000, whatever, if you want to win a negotiation and you have cash buyers, sometimes it's better to put 10,000 down, 20,000 down, whatever they feel comfortable with. But I do know that as a listing agent, the sellers do look at that and they do, they want to know how much is put down. Now you need to explain to them. A lot of times we still got to get through a home inspection. We still have to they may be putting 20 grand down, but they're doing a mortgage. So if for whatever reason they get a denial, the seller doesn't get to keep that 20 grand. So you have to you got to teach them that too, because the first thing that's going to happen is, and I've never had one at the 20 grand mark, but you know, if I have we're holding $1,000 deposit and the people's financing falls through. I had a new construction, same thing just happened. And you know, the builder was saying, well, let's keep their deposit. I'm like, we can't keep their deposit. And they know they were just trying to get the $1,000, but their financing kicked. So there's nothing we can do about that. So we do have earnest money, but a lot of times there's contingencies to get out of that earnest money. Now, if we have a commitment date and you get a commitment letter or go past the commitment date and do not have a response, then that's a gray area. So if you're representing buyers, you want to make sure your dates, and I'm going back to negotiating dates. So in the contract of sale, you'll have a commitment date. You better make sure that they're good on that commitment date, and or you've got an extension to give you another certain amount of time. If you don't do that, then they can take your deposit. So that's something to think about. I don't know if you guys have ever run into that, but yep. We already talked about repairs. So we are at 11:10. Let's take about let's come back at 11:25, and then we're gonna clip through the rest of this, and we'll be out a little bit early. There's not too much more to go through. So yeah, we'll take 15 minutes real quick, make some calls, or do whatever you need to do, and we'll come back.
Great,
good.
thanks.
Thanks.
Pam, when are you getting your house on the market?
I would like to get it done this week. I got the pictures taken the other day.
Good.
I was a little upset because I don't think it shows well at all because of the fact that there's so much stuff in there.
Okay.
And he even said it was a challenge. And of course, we didn't move anything because it is not my stuff. And so
Did Graves
that's,
take the pictures?
huh?
Did Graves take the pictures?
Yes, he did. Yes.
Okay.
He did a good job.
Good.
It's, by the way, his prices are very reasonable.
Good.
If you ever want, well, I know you've got your own person.
Yeah.
Also, I need to get the yard cleaned up. It's horrible.
Okay.
And I think it is,
Gotcha.
but you got that other one sold back of me.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's a, like I said, it's a hot market right now in our area. So I think if you put it on, at a reasonable price, it'll sell pretty quickly.
You think so? You think you can get it settled by September?
Hopefully. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay.
No,
I've
there's
got to
a
get
lot of-
around.
There's a lot of buyers out there right now. Just, and one thing to do is if you put it on whatever price you put it on, if you don't get 3 or 4 showings in the first 10 days, you probably need to reduce.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, you don't have to beat your own self up. I know you have to figure out where your money, what you're willing to take. But if you're not getting 3 to 5 showings in the first 2 weeks, you're overpriced right now.
Well, I think it's just going to be Griffin Higgins is going to be
That might be the case. We might bring a buyer the first day. We'll see.
Now I have to give her 24 hours. No, she wanted 48. I said, no, I can't do that.
Okay. Gotcha.
24 hours notice. The reason is because of this dog she's got
Mm-hmm.
that is a little dog that she doesn't know whether it'll bite or not. So I just wanted to, okay. Okay. Thank you for asking though.
No problem. No problem. All right, we're going to get started. Again, hopefully everybody's back. If not, they'll probably jump on. Before we go over the 3 Ps approach, there is a sheet in here. I think this is in yours on page 6, negotiation tips. And I thought this was really, really good. Number 1, above all else, be professional. Number 2, remember your goal, a signed contract. This is what you're driving towards, and it's what both of your agent or the buyers and the seller's agent and both clients want is a agreeable contract that's a win-win for everybody. Control what you say to anyone involved in the transaction. If you create anxiety in your client or other parties, you're reducing the leverage in negotiations. I have had instances where, whether it be between the buyer's agent and the seller's agent, or whether it be sometimes the seller was there during the showing and there were comments made, but any kind of anxiety or just the way you handle yourself can really affect the negotiation. There's some agents that you'll find that just, no matter what kind of mood they're in, they're trying to be a bulldog, and that's the way they're going to do it. But there's other agents where, they want to reach out to you and they want to come together to find a win-win for everybody. So just watch how you handle yourself and control what you say. Yes. Sometimes less is more. Less is more. Continually refer to motivation. So if you have buyers and, if you're negotiating back and forth with a counter, go back to them and say, we looked at 20 houses. This is the house that you guys said was your dream home. So continually go back and pump whatever property they have picked. It may not be something that you like, but they've made comments. They've shown that they really love this house. Sometimes you need to bring that back in during negotiations. Don't reveal too much. Listen more than talk. I would say this is when talking to another agent on the other side of the party, or side of the transaction. So make sure that you're not saying, well, these people, my client, they love this house. They'll do anything for this house. They told me that they'll pay 20 grand more than asking. can't do that. We can't do that unless you're specifically asked by your seller or by your buyer to do that. But, keep everything close to the chest. Don't be attached to the outcome. That's kind of what I was saying before. Sometimes you see agents that they're just like slobbering because they want this commission so bad that they actually hurt the negotiation of the deal, or actually they're not negotiating for their own party because they just will do anything. So keep all that out of it. Try to be as calm as possible. There's some deals you can't get to the settlement table and or to contract. It's just not going to happen. But go find another one at that point. So I like that. Those are good tips there. All right. So the 3 P's approach to negotiation. Prepare. Preparation is key to building confidence and ensuring a smooth negotiation process. Second is present. Move into the negotiation process by presenting your offer. And position. Move both parties close until you have a full agreement. So when we go to prepare, okay, so there's some things in prepare. You got to know your goal. So if you're a buyer's agent, obviously your buyers want to buy the property. It's their dream home, whatever. Know what your intent is. Know your client. Some people will tell you, look, I've got to be in this house in 30 days or I'm going to be homeless. Some people may say, this is my second choice, so I'm going to put a low ball offer in, and if I don't get this one, I'm okay because it's not really the one I love. So think ahead. So know what you're going to offer and your terms, and think ahead what probably will be countered. And then at that point, you're prepared to go back to your buyer and say, this is what the counter is. Set clear expectations. So if we're in a multiple offer situation and there are 7 other offers and your client is putting an offer in 30 grand less, you're probably going to set clear expectations that we're going to put this offer in, but we're probably not going to get it. Be informed. That goes back to your lender, goes back to types of financing, different caveats to the negotiation. Understand all those things. You've got to be prepared when, one, you're writing the contract, because you're going to have to go through that with your client and say, this is what I recommend, or this is probably not going to work because. So be informed. Obey the laws. That's, without saying. Don't do anything that would get you in trouble and get you in front of the board. Know the documents inside and out. So I know we're kind of in a weird place right now where a lot of documents are being done via e-sign. We were heading that direction anyway, but then with COVID, it kind of went to that. I don't hate it because it saves time, but you do need to know your documents. So especially as new agents and when you're working with buyers, especially first-time home buyers, you want to go through those documents with your clients, and you need to know them like the back of your hand. If you're fumbling all over yourself, have no clue when they ask you a question, it's just not a good look for you as their representation. So I was always told that every 6 months, go back and read the listing agreement and read the sales contract. Go from front to back, read it. There's some things that I skim through when I go through a buyer's agreement or a listing agreement, but you need to know the meat and potatoes, because I've had people that ask me, I've actually skimmed through sections that I didn't think were super important, and they said, well, what about this? And then I'd have to go back and say, oh, well, this means such and such. And there's times when I didn't know it as well as I should. So you learn, but know the documents inside and out. Let me see here. So one thing that on the listing side, we're going to jump over to the listing side. If we get an offer on the seller's property, it's your job as a listing agent to prepare yourself for the presentation. So what that means is you need to know the contract and all the terms of the contract, but you need to do a net sheet of what the current offer is. You need to probably do net sheets if you think they're going to counter of different numbers. So we get an offer of 200,000 with 10,000 closing costs. You think that will probably counter that, then I would probably come with a 202 with 10 back and a 205 with 10 back. You want them to know exactly what they're going to net during the sale of their home. The more that you go in there, if you go in and you haven't even read the contract, then you're going to be fumbling through the contract when you're presenting to them. So what I always do, this is just how I do, you don't have to do it that way, but if I get an offer in hand, I will say, I just received an offer on your home. Can I set up an appointment to meet with you and or a phone call and or a Zoom call, but I need to review it. So I give myself some time to review it. And what that will do is then I can sit down and digest and look at all the inclusions, all the exclusions, financing terms, make sure that I have a pre-approval letter. If I need to call the lender, and you guys can do that. So I don't know if anybody knows that, but you're on a listing side and you want to call the lender to see, is this a strong buyer? Sometimes you can ask them, do you think they need all that closing cost? And they'll tell you. They really can't give you specifics about the borrower, but they can help you. They want to make the deal happen. So sometimes I'll check with that. If it's a cash deal, have I seen the proof of funds? So you want to make sure when you go there, you're preparing that when you go there to negotiate or talk about the offer, that you have every answer to the seller's question. So does anybody have any questions about that on a sale, on a listing side? Okay, so just make sure that you're there when you present. You're gonna, so on a buying side, you're gonna present your offer to the other agent. Sometimes you can say to that other agent, is there anything important to your sellers that we may have not addressed? Closing dates. Sometimes you can do that before you write the offer too. So if you call the other agent and say, I'm going to bring you an offer, a lot of times agents will say, what do you think the offer is going to be? I'm not big on verbaling because I've had people that'll say, I'm offering full price for this house. And then when you finally sit down with them, they offer 10 grand light, and it looks like you've got egg on your face because you told the other agent you're getting a full price offer. So I don't necessarily think that would be advantageous, but you can have that conversation back and forth. When you're working with that buyer to prepare and present the offer, then you're going to get to know what's important to them as well, time-wise and different things. All right, let's see. I got to jump ahead here. I don't like following these sheets. I don't know if you guys have figured that out yet, but all right, yeah, when you talk to the other agent, whether you're a buyer's agent or a listing agent, when you're having that conversation, I think Steven might have said something earlier, pay attention to the verbal and nonverbal cues. A lot of times people are going to tell you more than what they intend to, and that may be, oh my gosh, my sellers are really anxious. Well, then you're going to kind of know that, okay, they may jump on our offer, or they may be more flexible than, or if, some people, you got to watch because agents tend to fib a little bit, but they may say, oh, we've had 14 showings in the last 2 days. Could be true. Sometimes it's not true, or, so just listen to what they say, listen to how they interact with you, and then you'll kind of know if you get a counter where you can stand. Once you give them the offer, then just sit tight. Don't press them. Don't, if you're a buyer's agent and you submitted an offer, you want to call the agent and say, offers in your email. Let me know if you have any questions. And then you can either do two things. You can put in there that you need an answer by a certain time. Some of your buyers will want that, or sometimes you leave it open-ended. What I would definitely recommend is at least give them 24 hours before you're texting, calling, hounding. On a negotiation side, if you are every 2 hours saying, have you talked to him? Have you talked to him? Have you talked to him? That makes you on the buyer side and your buyer look antsy. So that takes away some of the negotiation on that side. Stay calm and relaxed. So if they bring you a counter and it's ridiculous and you see it and you're having a conversation with the other agent, I mean, if it's in the office and they hand it to you and you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Don't react. Just stay calm, relaxed, say, I need to talk to my clients and go back. The negotiation needs to be between your clients. At the end of the day, your clients and the clients on the other side, and you or myself, we're all just middlemen, middle people in that. And then focus on the customer's needs. So when you are presenting the offer, and then we're not quite to position yet, but you're focusing on what's important to your clients. If your clients say, we need to get this house, then probably when you're writing the offer, you're going to put in that you need an answer by a certain time because you don't want other people to get in the mix. But you got to look out for their best interest, and give your offer the best chance. So you need to talk to your clients depending on the type of market you're in and location and sales. I mean, do your homework beforehand. If every house in the community, the exact same square foot, exact same layout has sold for $300,000, you need to make sure that you're going in at your best number, and you need to educate your people on that. So I guess that's what give your offer the best chance means. All right, position. So I guess this is kind of like jockeying back and forth. So negotiation in this, you can ask some what and how questions. What is important to, so if they come back to you and say, we need a 30-day closing, not a 60-day closing, what is important about closing in 30 days? So some open-ended questions that have conversation. You can always say they have to move out because they've already got another house under contract and they need to settle. Well, that's fine and well, but if your financing can't do it on the buyer side, then you need to relay that to the other agent. But at least you're having an open conversation and it's not a threatening conversation. My clients have to do 60 days. Just find out what's important to those people. That way you can try to figure out if you could talk to the lender and say, okay, can you get this done in 45 days instead of 60? Because the buyers really need to be out, or the sellers need to be out as fast as possible. And then it does say in here, you can go to them and say, my goal was to let the buyer know why this is important to you. So when you're having a conversation during negotiations, when you're really back and forth, you can then figure out why is this important to you. I'm going to go back to my estate sale situation. If I have a buyer and I put an offer in, cash deal, no inspection, settle in 15 days. They come back to me and they say, we accept every one of those terms, but we want to settle in 90 days. I could say, I want to go back to my buyer and tell them why you went back with 90 days. They're anxious to buy the property. They want to flip it. And they say, well, there's a lot of sentimental items in the house. All my family members have to come and we've got to divvy all these out. So then you can go back to your buyer and tell them this is what's important to them. Because then they're going to say, okay, I understand. Maybe they had the same situation, or maybe they can just, empathize with the buyer or the sellers and say, they're trying to unwind a life here and disperse all the stuff that's in the house that people want, and it's going to take more than 15 days. So a lot of times when you have that open dialogue about other things other than price, it helps. It really does help. So, think about the what and how questions when you're going back and forth with the other agents. All right. All right, analyzing counter tactics. They want me to break everybody up, but we're not going to be able to do that today. So there's 3 tactics. It says hot potato, good guy, bad guy, or nibbling. So when we go into that, hot potato is test the validity. Find out if the problem is real. Has the party with the problem exhausted every other possible solution? So dates, let's say, okay, we cannot find a moving company to get me out in 30 days. If you're on the other side of the deal, if you're on the listing side, you may say, well, I have excellent movers. I can have them come over and take a look, and they may be able to get us out in 20 days. So hot potato, you know, if they may be using that as an issue, but if you can get around that, you can say, look, I have a moving company. I have a lender that I really recommend that does this all the time. They can do it in half the time. So try to go back and forth with the other agent and offer some solutions on that point. Good guy, bad guy. Call them on their game. If it continues, then attribute what the bad guy says to the good guy, since they are a tag team anyway. Let's see what that means. Likely. So a lot of times, you know, if you have an agent that's a bully, and I hate to talk about other agents, but there's some that is going to just bulldog you the whole time, then you probably can sometimes diffuse that just by killing them with kindness. Just say, John, I really want to get this done, and I want to listen to what your sellers have, you know, what their opinion is and what their must-haves are, and I'm going to try to do the best I can with my clients. So I feel like if you step back, but if you automatically feel threatened and you go back at them, then that's just, it's going to go the whole process, and that's going to go in the contract stage and is going to continue the entire time. Just did a deal with an agent. It's probably my third deal with her, and I just know that every single conversation we have is going to be combative. And a lot of times, I will be honest with you, she works me up so bad that I get to the point where I'm close to where she is, but it's just threatening and pushing, and it's not how it should be. We are just middlemen, women in the deal, and sometimes I let my emotions get a little ahead of myself. And then sometimes I actually try to push my clients or negotiate hard just because I want to try to negotiate back at her, just because that's the way she plays, and I want to be that person to push back. So
it's a question for you real quick on that, Russ, because I appreciate the being candid, because that's pretty much how I would be. But, and I've thought about this, as you get to season and we start to do these deals. My other thing is, of course, you know, whether you're listing or selling, you're to present all offers, you know, well, more on the, you know, as far as on the listing side. But if you have an agent you're working with and they're just being flat out rude, unprofessional, I mean, don't you have a right as an agent to say, look, I mean, if it gets to be that point, it's like, look, provide me all the information via email. I will take care of it on my end with my client. But until you can learn to act professionally, this communication is done. We are not, and you know, we're not going to proceed this way. And just, you know, that way you let them know that, look, I'm not going to play your game. You know, this is about us being professionals, taking care of our clients.
Yep.
And if you can't, and if you can't see that you're not being, if you can't see that you're being obstinate and unprofessional, well, then here's how I'm going to tell you how we're going to handle it.
So here's how I handle it, a little bit different from most of you on the call, but like where I'm at right now, when I find myself getting to that point, then I switch to completely transactional. So it doesn't mean that I'm not taking care of my client on that side, but pretty much all my communication at that point will come from via email, because
Okay.
I want to actually document the conversation at that
Right.
point. That way, if we ever get into an issue and whatever person says, you know, he was nasty to me, well, you can read my emails. I've got all my emails and or text messages. So not saying this is good, but if I feel like we're in that situation, everything goes to either text or email.
Okay. Appreciate it.
And I have transaction coordinators. So if there's transactional items that are not negotiation, my admins are taking care of it, because I don't want to have a conversation with you anymore. And that might sound bad, but
No,
I feel like
I
we're
get it.
hurting the deal if we're
Yeah.
going to just argue and about every little thing. We're not doing what we're intended to do. Our intention is the buyer wants to buy the house, the seller wants to sell the house, and everybody's got to make decisions. And so if we're doing a deal together and we're battling, at the end of the day, we don't make those decisions. So we can battle all we want, but if the buyer says, I don't really care, I just want to buy the house, then we got to do what we got to do.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know, and then, you know, if it gets really, really bad, you got to get the broker involved. If it gets nasty where they're threatening and getting out of hand, and this doesn't happen all the time, but there are some people that every deal they're trying to knock you down every deal. But that's how I do it. I kind of step back a little bit and say, okay, if this is how we're going to play, then I guess the average negotiation on the phone is not going to work. We're just going to do it transactionally. And it's going to be, okay, I am going to present my counter and I'm going to get my buyers or sellers to sign every deal. Good, bad, or whatever. If I know an agent really well and we're negotiating a deal after the first contract, most of the time I'll verbal a counter back or I'll send an email following that up saying, I just talked to you on the phone. We're countering $5,000 higher and we need another 10 days to settle. I'm following that up with an email so we have a paper trail. But, you know, if we're going to have words every time we go in a transaction, then that's all you're going to get from me at that point. I don't know if that sounds bad, but that's how.
No, I'm curious. I mean, it's kind of sad in the sense that, like, wow, I was like all excited. I'm away from corporate world. Don't have to do all that. And I'm like, oh man, now I'm right back to having to do email. But I get it. So
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Well, and like I said, those are going to be some of the ones you're going to know when you're in a transaction, whether you're negotiating the deal or in the transaction, that I better cover my tail. I better document all conversations on this one, because this could get ugly. And, you know, do we run into too many of those? No, but when you do a lot of deals, it happens sometimes. So most of the time I'm going to be able to pick the phone up and I'm going to say, Terry, how can we get this to settlement? How can we get this under contract? Where are we? We're $5,000 short. Can we meet in the middle? Where my buyers cannot come up anymore, your sellers can't come up anymore. Do you want to cut our commission $1,000 and each take $500 hit and make the deal happen? Those are conversations that we need to have, like to have. I don't like to cut commission, but if you have to, you have to. I'm just saying those are the conversations that we should be having as agents, not trying to plow people down and get your way every single time. So
my word, 8 commission is better than no commission. So I mean,
it is, and that's so, you know. And then the next thing on here is and it's called nibbling, and I don't know if I would call it this, but you know, when you're negotiating, you can always say, if I give you this, you got to give me this. So you know, there might be something my clients may have said, oh man, I love that patio furniture. So then you go to something as little as that, say, okay, I'll give you an extra 10 days, which the seller needs 10 extra days, but they got to throw in the patio furniture. So there are so many little things that can be incorporated if you're trying to win the negotiation. I'm not, you know, if I had a survey done, my clients probably wouldn't give me a 10 as far as like a strict, serious bulldog on negotiations. But my opinion is we are just the facilitators to get them to where they want to be. So, but you can go in there and say, yes, give me that patio furniture, I'll give you another 10 days. So you can work it any way you want to work it there. Does anybody have any questions on any of that? You guys go to 1 o'clock every day or every time, or? Because we're getting
No. I would say we've been out as early as 12, and usually it's around 12:30.
Okay.
Monday was 1:30 almost.
Yeah, that one was. I actually had to bow out because it was like getting so. I was like, I had to go.
Did Carol teach that?
Yes.
Yeah, she knows the material better than I do. I'm just looking here. There's some, you know, we're supposed to break off in groups and do some stuff, but I don't know if we're going to do that. Does anybody have any questions, any real life situations that they're in that, you know, that I could answer questions about negotiation and about how that process is handled from either what we learned about or anything that you guys have going on?
I guess my two questions are, one, how often are you negotiating? I mean, of course, it's simple. Like, if you roughly, if you had to take a percentage of all your deals, how often do you think you're doing some sort of negotiation? And then the second, on the back end of that question, is what do you think is the top two things that are always negotiated from what you do?
I'm negotiating every deal, because every deal there's probably going to be something that is negotiated. Even like, I've got some new construction communities that we do, everything's basically selling for full price. So if you bring me an offer that's not full price, we're negotiating the full price. But even if they bring me an offer to full price, sometimes it's negotiation as far as settlement date. They want to settle in 30 days and the house doesn't even have drywall yet. So I've got to negotiate to get more time for my seller, the builder and developer. So every deal you're negotiating in some form or fashion. Some deals you're going to get where all the terms are good, and you sign it, but then there could be a home inspection involved. So you're probably going to negotiate every single deal you do in some way or the other. Some of them are going to be easier and some are going to be harder.
Okay.
The bane of my existence is home inspection negotiation. I don't like it. It's every time I feel like it's an ordeal, because, and I probably need to get better about, well, let's go back. I don't work too many buyers, but on the listing side, I have a construction background. So a lot of times I refute things that, like Terry said, that happen in the home inspection. Why did you flag that? So if you bring me an offer, or if somebody that's not my team brings me an offer and, they're asking for all these things, immediately I kind of go into like not retaliation, but I'm like, hold on, this is ridiculous. I can't believe they asked for all this stuff. That gets me worked up for some reason. I need to be a little bit better about being calm. Now, recently, I have a couple good, really good contractors that get a lot of work from us. And I will go through, and when I talk to my sellers, I can say, let me get Rick out, and he can go and take a look at these items on the list and give us a price on what they cost, and/or he'll say that doesn't need to be fixed. And so a lot of times when I'm negotiating an early contract, I will also negotiate out my response to the addendum, because I need some time to get the contractor in there. So let's say we need to have, so I get the report and I get what you're asking, and I need to respond to you within 1 day. Well, that's a lot of times, unless it's a clean inspection report, that's almost impossible, because if you have to get somebody to put eyes on it, it's hard to get a contractor to go out there that day or the next day. So that's something that I have been really pushing on the listing side. I'll get the contractor to go out there. That way I've got double set of eyes on it. I've had the inspector come out and I've had the contractor to go out. And a lot of times when that's done, we can then either say we'll fix all the items, or we'll say we're going to do 1, 2, 4, and 6. And then we send our addendum back. So, but in my market, the houses, every deal we got to negotiate inspections, and it's not fun. It's not fun, but occasionally you'll get one where nothing comes up on the home inspection. But I'd say even at the beach on some newer houses, they're going to find something, because they're getting paid. They're going to find something to flag. So.
Yeah, no, and that's sorry to pepper you, just because we're getting to the point now. It's like you can read something in theory in a book or something, but I would like to have real world working examples.
Yeah, when I go, and I'm sorry guys, I do a lot on the listing side, so that I prefer to that. But like when I get my contractors to go out there and look at things and/or have things fixed, whether it be electrician or whoever, I'm always saying to my sellers, if we get licensed contractors out there, they have a license and insurance. So once we do that work and you settle on this property, anybody can sue anybody, but the liability seems to be taken off of you because we got a licensed contractor in there to do the job. So I am basically taking myself out of there and my opinions out of the deal, and saying, let's get Rick or let's get Doug or let's get somebody that I have to give a second opinion. That way I'm not telling them, oh, well, that roof's not a big deal, don't worry about it. I mean, I can say that and I can mean that, but what happens if there is an issue and now we're all in a lawsuit? So, I think you definitely need to just sub that out or have someone that that will go out there and look at those items. They may only get 1 out of 2 jobs that you send them to, but some people are hungry enough that they just work off of realtors' contract fixes. So find some people that do that kind of work. Does anybody else have anything? All right. Well, thanks for sticking with me today. And if you guys ever need anything, you can reach out to me, call me, questions or anything on any part of this. And I know you guys are getting real close to being done with Ignite, and hope you're back in the office to some extent and starting to get rolling here in this market. So I think we're going to see, especially at the beach, I think you're seeing that spring market start right now, which is a little bit late, but that's good. So,
Hey,
all right.
Ross,
Yes,
what office are you in?
Secret.
I guess we're considered out of Lewis, but we have our own mega agent team office here in Seaford. So
Okay.
we have a standalone here.
You have, wasn't Juliana, I think, on your team?
Juliana's on my team. Yep. Did you take Bold?
Yeah, because that's where I met her. So I remember something about Higgins. So when it came on, I was like, that name's familiar. So I was just curious if she's part of your team.
Yeah, I think 6 of my agents did Bold this year.
Wow.
And they definitely seems like the people that took Bold really had a good start to the year. So definitely worth it. Did anybody take the Bold pivot?
Yes.
How was it?
It's good. It's different than being in the classroom, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's good in the sense that I think you get high profile names within Keller Williams. So you kind of, you get people you would never necessarily get to your market center. But you can only do so much, online and things. It's not as intense as where you're actually in the classroom talking with people, hearing the stories and everything.
Yeah.
But it was still good.
Yeah. I took it last year when I was actually still a Remax agent, and I even as an agent that's been in the business for a while, I really liked it. It pushed me to get on the phone and have conversations that I usually don't do every day, and definitely boosted the business. So yeah, it was good. Take advantage of all this training. I'm telling you, if you guys are all new to KW, the other companies do not provide the training that you're getting here. So you're in a good place, definitely in a good place. And I'm going to go back and say, find someone in the market center or in your office or whatever that does a lot of business and take them out to lunch, ask them questions. I would say that 95% of the people will be willing to share anything that they know. So be a sponge. Always reach out to people and learn that way. So, yep. I came from a brokerage that we didn't have that. So it was hard. So now I'm actually Bridget's actually putting me in contact with people that are doing the same kind of volume that my team's doing. So I'm learning from other people all over the country. So this has been an eye-opening experience, but you guys are in a good place. So just let you know. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Russ.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Appreciate it,
Bye.
Russ. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.